we can't stop talking about it because we have a long way to go.
Welcome to the Last Catherine podcast.
Hi, welcome to Last Catherine. Thanks for joining us again. I'm Pallas.
I'm Robert John Hadfield, and we're going to start off with our What's in the Blank question today before we introduce who's with us. So here we go. The year blank was the first time a woman was elected to the U.S. Congress. And the reason I pick the questions that I do is because they're ones that you almost don't expect the answer. The first woman was elected to the U.S. Congress in 1916.
Wow.
That's impressive.
Now, one of the reasons this is so unbelievably fascinating is when did the 19th Amendment get passed, which is what allowed women's suffrage. Do you know what year that was?
Like 10 years later?
It was 4 years later.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's so
the 19th Amendment, which allowed all women across the country to vote, was passed 4 years after the first woman. And it's so funny because for years and years and years, women had the ability to get elected to office but couldn't vote. Isn't that funny? So and the 19th
like going
Amendment,
to war but not being able to drink.
Well, I guess so. Yeah,
country,
it's kind of
drink.
It was kind of a strange thing. But anyway, so the person, her name was Jeanette Rankin, and this is another thing. Guess what party she was from? The first woman to be elected to the U.S. Congress was a Republican.
Yeah, I would have to say the Republican if you're
because it's funny.
It's surprising. Yeah. I want to look her up and find out what her
and she didn't get reelected in 1918 primarily because she voted against going into World War I, and that destroyed her opportunities to get elected 2 years later. And so she actually then ran for the Senate and lost. And anyway, that's the first woman that was elected to Congress. You know, I'm gonna share one other statistic that's interesting. How many women have served in the U.S. Senate over the course of the United States since then? This number. There's so many great, interesting things about this stuff. I'll just tell you, there's 46 women that have served in the United States Senate since the beginning of the country. 46, and currently there's 20. So out of 100 seats in the United States Senate, there's 20 that are occupied by women. So, which brings us to the person that we invited to be with us today. Another one of my favorite people in the world. Aww. This is Tiffany Coolidge. And the reason we know each other is that I ran for Senate, the state Senate of Colorado in 2008. And Tiffany was nice enough to try to help me get elected, which I didn't. And you've run many successful campaigns over the years. And I think that the party, the people in charge of the party said, "Can you please just go give this knucklehead a little bit of help, just something, so that he has some idea what he's doing." So anyway, we appreciate you coming today. And what we were hoping to talk about a little bit is you have so much experience in politics. I know you don't do a lot of it right now, but you in the past you have done it so much and been part of so many successful campaigns. And then when we were talking, you said something about, there's a lack of female leadership. And then you also shared some of the reasons that women are used as campaign managers and what have you. And I was kind of surprised at what it was. And I wonder how many people actually know some of these reasons. So maybe you could dive into that a little bit and share some of those.
Sure. And I can only speak from my own experience. So I was kind of young and geeky early on. So when I was a freshman in college, I went to UCCS. I was student dean up there, and I started interning for Congressman Hadfield. And at the time, his office manager was Bill Cadman, who is now the Senate president, by the way, of the Colorado Senate. But at the time, he was running for state house. That was the first campaign I did when I was 18. So I was the chair also of the college Republicans up there. So organized that race, got really passionate about campaigns. He won, helped Senator McElhaney up there too, who won, and that kind of spearheaded my campaigns. So the Springs for Republicans is a very good base to work at, but I always loved the campaign side. So let me think, so many years ago, but then I met a couple of the governor's staffers. So then I started working for our current governor, Bill Owens at the time, and then got done with college early so I could go work on his reelection campaign in 2002. So at that time, I was doing the Get Out the Vote effort, because back in 2002, that was the first time they did a statewide Get Out the Vote effort. So I started noticing about that time that females, at least in my party, only did fundraising and press. And it took me a couple of years to kind of realize why, but females didn't usually do the nuts and bolts. Like, I never was a campaign manager till 2004, but even in the early years, I loved the organization. I loved, like being the right-hand man to the candidate. I loved doing like the organizing of the grassroots, but there was no one else that was doing that was like me, that was a female. So that was very frustrating to me. And I started to realize that women were doing the fundraising and the press because they could, wear skirts and they could flirt with the reporters and they could flirt with the donors. And it was a very like stereotypical role that I wasn't comfortable in. Like, I liked wearing like my cargo pants and like putting up yard signs and doing the nuts and bolts. But it was tough because I didn't really have a mentor that was like a female to look up to. So the first race I ran was 2004. It was Senator Mitchell for Senate. And one of his first issues was that I was female because, there's kind of a stereotype of young females in politics. At the time, I wasn't married yet, of, maybe improper relationships. So that first race, I had my now husband of 10 years agree to go to literally every campaign event with us. So I would never be alone with the candidate. But just the fact that,
interesting.
Just the fact as a female, just because I was female, I literally had to have my now husband at every event.
You had to have a chaperone
Yes.
for the public eye.
Wow.
Yes. And I mean, even we got married a year later, but that stigma never left. Like when I ran a statewide campaign in 2006 and you're on the road and there's 60 counties out on the Western Slope and I can spend the night at the same hotel as a candidate because I was female. So I would have to have my field staffers go to events that I should be going to because I was female. And that was really tough for me. So that was part of my issues. Yeah. And I can talk about any of that a little bit more in depth, but that was really tough.
Yeah.
In 2006, when I ran that statewide campaign, I was the only female running a statewide campaign in either party at that time. But especially on the Republican side, that was a tough thing. And then when I lost that campaign, one of the very defining moments of my life was there was a new blog that was starting, Colorado Polls, and there was 187 comments debating if I was pretty or not as a campaign manager.
Really?
Yeah, and that has stuck with me to this day because that was awful.
What year was this?
2006, right after Hillman, because I lost that race by 1%. 187 comments. I remember the number. I remember every single comment, and it was awful because, James Carville, not an attractive man. Karl Rove, not an attractive man, but nobody debates their looks.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised because that's what people always dig into.
Yeah.
About women. So
now is that changing? I mean, do you see that kind of thing changing right now, or is it
not a lot?
I
haven't been in it since 2010, but even once I was still married, there were still always like on gossip websites and debates, like if I was too close to my candidates. And as a female, by the way, I never hugged a candidate. I would always call them sir. Like no matter what. So I wouldn't even call them by their first name to try to help that stigma. I only wore pants. I was very conscious about it and I still ran into that issue over and over again. You know what I mean?
It's such a waste of energy.
I know.
You had to be so aware and
I still call my candidates sir for the most part. But when I see Mitchell, I still call him sir out of habit and to never have like anything come off improper.
So, but now the question is the opposite true though? So in other words, if you have a female candidate and a male...
No, not at all.
Nothing like that happens.
Nothing. I mean, first of all, there's so many more males involved in campaigns that that's not an issue. And then second of all, no, I can't explain it. There's just not that stigma at all. So does the press watch for that then? I don't know if it's so much the press. I just think that, something becomes a stereotype like young interns sleeping with politicians, that it becomes like the running joke, and that running joke becomes part of society where you think that, oh, she's a young female, either her daddy got her the job or she's sleeping with the candidate. And I mean, that's just a frustrating truth that never really went away.
This goes back to the things that we've said before about how hard women have to work in comparison to men to prove their worth in an industry.
Right. Okay. This is great. So now this is really important because we always, because you're a Republican.
Yes.
So am I. Mm-hmm. And we're sitting here talking about women's issues, which are traditionally considered liberal, whatever. Mm-hmm. And the question I have then is, is that issue that you're talking about equal across the board in both parties?
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, they have been a couple more Democratic campaign managers, so I'm not sure. It'd be interesting to talk to them and see about their experiences. I think there's a little bit more stigma in the Republican Party in the sense that, like, when I would be in, like, the smaller towns, like on the Western Slope with Hillman, like, women would come up to me and be like, oh, are you his wife? Like, automatically. Mm-hmm. Like, And I'm like, no, I'm his campaign manager. And there was a little bit more shock. So maybe it's a little bit more, if you are a little more conservative, you're more kind of old school thinking of like women's roles, especially when I was on the Eastern Plains and Western Slopes. So it could be a little bit of a party issue.
Yeah, but my guess though is that you'd find it in both parties. I mean, just because
to a lesser degree.
The comments of people digging into the way you look is going to be
still
across the board, no matter what. I mean, I wouldn't say that's just Republicans.
No, that's 100%.
That's just being a woman.
but
agreed.
But are the comments? See, that makes me wonder. Then, I mean, when people are going after that, when they're commenting like that, is it the other party going after the other party?
No,
or
I mean,
people within
trolls being mean
both,
to a woman.
It's both, because you remember when Colorado polls, everything got leaked. I mean, I know who half those comments are, and then half of them were within the party. So I mean, there's always like jealousy anytime that you're running on a higher level. But like I said, there was no guys' comments about like thinning hair or if someone had a beer gut. I mean, on the guy side. So instead of attacking me for like my skills, like there was that many comments about my looks.
So maybe you can just take that as, actually, my skills are perfect. And so the only thing they can find is that I had a pimple on my cheek that day.
True.
That's absolutely fascinating. Do we see anything like this? I mean, right now we have the potential that we're going to be seeing. Of course, Hillary Clinton's probably going to be I'm assuming.
But her looks have been talked about for like
this is my point.
20 years.
She's a poster girl for this kind of thing happening, which I think is ridiculous. I mean, why in the world is that something that, it's so important that we're talking about? What can be done to change this type of stigma? I mean, is there anything out there that makes this change? Because are there any women's organizations that are coming to the rescue over this kind of thing? Let me tell you why I asked this question. Because I remember back in the 1990s when Bill Clinton had those two women that had accused him of rape.
Yeah.
Now, the tradition has always been believe the woman, believe the woman, believe the woman.
They trashed those women.
But as soon as they attacked Bill Clinton, I never saw a single woman's group come to their defense. They all came to Bill Clinton's defense. And so what is it that makes that happen? Because you would think, and it seemed in that case that it was all like, well, Bill Clinton's our candidate, and so we don't really care at this point because our political view is more important than our support of women.
I think I'm not in the Democratic Party, but I think that if I was talking to them, they try to justify it about like Bill Clinton overall is going to do more to advance the rights of women than these two women coming against him. I don't agree with that, but I think that's probably their mindset of he's going to advance women's rights way more than who was running in, like George Bush was going to do.
Well, I see that happening a lot with men in power. I mean, if you talk about sports, football players, any man that's in a powerful public image that they don't want their image of that person tainted, the media will back that guy. Well, she's obviously lying because she wants to get a bunch of his millions or whatever.
Even Bill Cosby from the start. I mean, it took like 80 women coming forward, but in the beginning, it was like this disbelief that he couldn't do that. And obviously, they're like, fame whores.
Yeah, so if it's like Joe Schmo next door, oh, well, obviously, I've actually seen him peeping through his window before at me. But if it's, some rich actor or rich whatever, then...
So if this kind of thing is happening...
I love that guy.
Yeah, really, exactly.
He made a touchdown.
So if this kind of thing is happening to you as a campaign manager in Colorado...
Local races.
Yeah. What is it... How does this expand into the actual candidates, the female candidates, and the kind of things that they're dealing with? I mean,
I would never run because of it. Like I felt like I was behind the scenes and that was a role I was comfortable with, but because of the social media, and this was in 2006 before like you really have, I mean, we did Facebook in 2006 for the first year ever. I mean, now the amount of blogs that you'd be scrutinized on, I would never do it as a female. Like I liked the behind the scene roles and I couldn't even do that as a campaign manager. I can't imagine putting myself out there 100% and have like 1,000 blogs talking about if I was attractive or not. So I think it definitely deters women from running.
Did you ever run a female's campaign?
Holly Hansen, that same year as you.
Holly, sure.
That's the one, because we don't have a lot of females if you think about our party.
Well, yeah.
All the rest were
Although the very first woman elected to the U.S. Congress
was
a Republican. which this went over.
So the Republicans get a badge for that one.
Get a badge.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
And
voted against the war.
That brings me to a question I had about something you said earlier. You mentioned that a lot of the women in your party will be on the press or fundraising because they can. You were saying they can flirt and things like that.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if, because of the intensity of being, like your role is, I don't know. It's gonna sound really sexist, like I'm against women almost, but that role sounds very like challenging and very detail oriented and things that would be mannish, you know. So you're going to get scrutinized. Like those women didn't get called, ugly on a blog or whatever, but because you were in that role, a man's role, you're getting scrutinized. So do you think that deters those women, whichever it is, from coming into different roles and just staying with what's kind of safer?
I think it's also a personality thing. I compare like fundraising and press to lobbying. So I tried being a lobbyist for a year in a campaign, and I couldn't do it for the same reason because like it's a very similar role where like legislators like you to like, have like an extra button undone and to be flirty with them. And I'm not.
Would they ask you to do that?
No, but it's that norm. Have you ever been at the State House when the women are waiting outside the glass doors to give men like their cards inside, the state legislators? And I did it for a year, and I did it for developmental disabilities, and it was an issue I was really passionate about, but I'm not a flirty person. Like I believe that I have an idea or I have a good concept and that should stand by itself, and I'm just not, it's never been in my nature to be like extra charming or flirty. And that's why I like campaign management, because you can be honest with the candidate and be like, you suck because of X, Y, and Z. And you can be the one person that's not blowing sunshine up. You know what I mean? You could just be the go-to person. So I love that role. Well, lobbying is very similar to fundraising and press, where you're expected to be like flirty and it's good to wear skirts and you get drinks with the legislators. And, I just didn't find it. I wasn't comfortable in that role because I felt like it's like pushing into that gray area, and I operate very well in black and white. So I think for fundraising, back to your question, I think there's women that's what they like. That's their personalities. It's like they're just more driven towards that. So I don't know if they would want to be more the manager side. I mean, we're putting up yard signs at 2 a.m., and getting dirty. So there's that a little bit of personality, and then I do think there's a little bit of like there's less scrutiny because there's a ton of fundraisers and there's a ton of press, but there's only one campaign manager per each race, especially statewide. I mean, there's only 4 races statewide. So if I'm 1 out of 4, I'm going to get that much more scrutiny.
The closer you get to having more power, the more scrutinized you're going to be.
Because there's the candidate and you, and that's it.
Yeah.
And in fundraising and press, you could have many tiers of people between you and the candidate.
So I guess it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg situation. I mean, this would not just about political, but women across the board trying to strive to be the CEO.
Yeah,
trying
exactly.
To strive to
that's a better like equivalent, I would think. Yeah.
It's challenging. It's easier to say, okay, well, this fits. At least then I'm in politics, but this fits what people expect of me, and I don't have to really confront all of these scary things.
Exactly.
So were those kind of unwritten rules, or do people actually ever talk about that? I mean,
they're unwritten. When I first was going to do that state Senate campaign and I approached him, Mitchell, it was one of the first things he said. He said, I'm not entirely comfortable having, a female manager. The stigma might be there. So what's a good way to combat that? And I was like, I'll just make sure Rich, my husband, is at every event. I even said it before I talked to my husband. I was like, because I really wanted that job to kind of prove myself, because I was always on like the second tier organizational level, and I really wanted that chance to manage a race. And his race was pretty contested, and he's got some controversial issues, and I was really excited about that race. But that's when I first noticed there were starting to be these rules, because when you're lower level, I didn't notice it as much. And then when he said that, it was kind of this eye opener of like, okay, I never thought about like, because I'm female and you're a male, that's going to change the dynamic here.
But it does.
It did 100%.
Right, wrong, good or bad.
Yeah.
It just is. That's the way things are. What can be done?
I don't know. That one's tough, because there's always going to be that stereotype of, there's always new stories of young interns and stuff. I don't know. More females. Obviously if I work with a female, that stigma drops. I guess more females in office and running always helps. More female campaign managers is going to help. So it's not, so weird. I'd have to give it more thought beyond that, though.
It's a cultural change. Yeah. That would be all of our culture needs to shift for all these things, right? Because you were asking, how do we combat people attacking women's, beauty or weight or whatever? That's a huge cultural shift.
Hillary, since she's been first lady's been attacked. I mean, we're going on like 20 plus years of debating Hillary's hairstyles, and pantsuits.
Not to mention, as women get older, then they're attacked for being too old.
Yeah. And then if they get Botox or something to look less old, then they get attacked for that.
Yeah.
Where men look distinguished when they get older.
Yeah. I mean, I would hope that over time it changes as women they're taken at their word. You know, like you're saying, you speak what your ideas hit
that first race was 2004 with Mitchell. I mean, it's been 11 years. I mean, it could be better, but I doubt it. So,
I mean, you weren't privy to any of the locker room talk, and I'm sure that those candidates and those people were talking about, oh, did you see that pretty whoever, whatever, that gave me her card, you know? And probably comments that are way worse than that, I would assume. But
God, it's so interesting. I mean, to have those, once again, those kind of unwritten rules. So, Tiffany, I got to ask you another question here. What was it? Because I know you grew up in a Democrat family.
Very much
I've met your dad. I don't know if I ever met your mother, but I know that, and they still are.
Yeah.
What happened? Where did you go wrong? What happened to you?
Well, remember, I'm geeky, so when I rebel, it's in a geeky way of becoming a Republican. I don't know. I mean, in high school, the Clinton trial was happening, and I was very passionate about that. I was in mock trial and in debate, and I just tended to be more conservative in nature. And then when I went to college, like I said, it was pretty much cemented because I was so geeky, so young. So, I mean, even though I worked for the party, I like to choose my candidates, and I always chose candidates that were more conservative.
Why? I mean, so you say you're more conservative in nature. What are those? Well,
I'm pretty socially liberal, but I'm pretty fiscally conservative, especially now owning a small business that has lined up more. You know, socially, I tend to be a little bit more liberal. Like, I'm strongly pro-life, but I've never picked candidates based off that. So, and then on gay rights, I've always been really liberal. So my cousin grew up in a 2-dad household that I'm really close to. So
when you say, I mean, a lot of the principles then, and I know for me, it's one of the big things is I just don't want the government any more involved in my life than they absolutely have to be.
And that's huge.
And you know, if I have a candidate that says, we're going to do this for you, I'm like, I don't want you to do anything more for me because you tend to destroy more things. Every time you fix something, you break 5 things. So why don't we stop fixing things, please? That's why I end up where I end up. And when you say...
And school choice is big for me, so I tend to be really conservative on that issue. So that's another big driving factor.
And that's a big thing. So, I mean, there's no shortage of things. I wonder from you, when you grew up in that world, what are the principles then? And I know, because I'm fairly socially liberal. We've talked about that a bunch. But yeah, when it comes to anything where you have the government that wants to do something for me, especially the federal government, I just go, I don't want you doing anything more. We are now $17 trillion in debt because you want to do things for me, and you've destroyed the entire future. Stop doing things. And if you're going to tell me you're going to do more things, then I'm not going to vote for you.
See, it's funny because I'm sort of the opposite, because I'm like, all you're doing for me right now, government, is buying military so that we can do what? Get into more wars?
Well, yeah, the more power you give the government, the more you vote for people that want the government to be more powerful, the more you enable that kind of thing to happen in the future.
Well, but that's the
part they go...
Yeah. I want them to take care of our basic human needs, like healthcare. You know?
That's highly debatable. We can have a whole nother discussion on that.
Agreed.
Okay.
That's really...
And education.
Yeah.
That's another debate on how much money we throw at education too.
Yeah, and then all these years later, all this money it hasn't worked yet. We just need more money. Okay.
Yes, another topic.
That might be the financial structure that we've set up.
Anyway, that's a whole other. That is another topic. So before we wrap up here, tell us a little bit about what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I did campaigns through 2010 and then just got a little bit burnt out from it and kind of needed to put my health first, but still give back to the community. I've always done campaigns because I really like to be part of the change, as cheesy as that sounds. So I wanted to work with people on a one-on-one basis and still kind of give back to the community at large. So I now own a gym. So it's called Blunt Force Training. It's right next to Mile High Stadium. We have 12 trainers and we do kind of functional strength fitness. So, we get people to do their first pull-up. We push tires. We slam tires. We hit them with sledgehammers. We climb ropes.
You hit tires with sledgehammers?
Yes, like my favorite thing. Yes, we do boxing.
Whoa, okay, hold it. You're hitting tires with sledgehammers. Yes. First of all, who thought... hey, you know what we should do? We should hit tires with sledgehammers. Who was the one that thought that?
I think it's from Rocky. I'm pretty sure they took
Really?
Rocky for.
I don't remember that.
Well, he's chopping wood, and I think they're like. Basically,
I remember him chopping
my gym
wood.
is pretty much
He had a
based
beard.
off Rocky. So like anything that like Rocky did, especially in like the Russian like sequences, like
Right.
I'm like, we should do that. But I think it comes from that old like functional fitness where everything kind of goes back around. So I feel like the big gym, like big corporate gyms, and I worked at 24 for 3 years. Like you get away from all the fancy machines and you go back to basics. So it goes
The
in
basics
trends.
of hitting tires.
Yes.
Yeah, with sledgehammer.
Like
Yes,
they did
'cause that's
thousands of years ago.
Yeah, when I was a kid, that's how
I
I,
think it's the
went and
chopping
played.
wood thing. I really do.
yeah,
I think
so.
it's
It makes
you go
sense.
back to like people pay money to go back to doing manual labor. It's bizarre, but pretty much that's what I do. It's like
maybe you guys should
flip
raise
I know.
houses. Like
Seriously, it
go into the
feels like
Amish
that.
communities. Can we just build a few barns?
I mean,
we have to
but
work
the,
out today.
The equipment is like it's fun, but people pay money, so we come in and you flip tires, you beat tires, you climb up ropes. It's very like the best of old school gym class and like the military, I would say, combined. But it's fun. I mean, my gym's pink, so even though it's called Blunt Force,
Really?
we soften it a little bit. Yeah, and I feel like it's the best of my personalities. I'm very like blunt force in nature of like how I am, but then I soften it with a little pink. So I still am female.
Yeah.
And our client base is like 60-40 female males. But I make the males, like when I train fighters, they still have to wear pink logos.
No way.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so where is it? What's your website?
It's just www.blunt-force.com. Easy to find.
Okay.
Cool.
And where is it located?
Literally right next to the Bronco Stadium.
Oh.
Or that giant warehouse right there next to the VQ Hotel that they renovated.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we're that giant
awesome.
warehouse. There's a pink door. You can't miss it.
Because it has a pink door. That's cool. Do you ever have any Broncos over there? working
No,
with you?
but like during the game stuff, we've had the doors open going into it, so they tailgate in our parking lot, which is funny.
Oh, how cool.
But we do workouts around their stadium. Like today in my 10 a.m. class, we literally ran around the stadium dragging a 90-pound tire. So there's not a shortage of tires at my gym.
Apparently. That is too cool. And that's your and you've been doing that for four years?
Going on 5 years.
Going
So
on 5 years
2010,
now.
after my last campaign. So
Is that where you started when you opened your gym?
I did 2 years or 3 years at 24 while I was still doing campaigns, including John's campaign, and then was in Arvada for a year, and now we're going on 4 years there. So yeah, it's fun.
So just really quickly, why that?
Because there's so much similarities. Because like I said, you have that one-on-one relationship with the candidate, which is like your client, and you get to help them achieve a goal, but it's so much more rewarding. Like I've kind of talked about before, when you win a race, it's because your candidate was so great as a campaign manager. And if you lose, it's because you suck as a campaign manager. Yeah. But you get somebody to run their first race or do their first pull-up, and they look at you like you gave them their first child. Like it's amazing. It's like a constant, like you feel good about yourself and giving back. And then we do a lot of big community events too. So I get to give back to the whole. Like we did a planking for Prescott for those firefighters. We do a Mustache for Cash event every year for the Youth Opportunity Fund. We do about 50 races a year, always going towards, nonprofits. We do fundraisers. So I love it. It's fun, it's rewarding, and, you get to be part of something.
But in this, when you get frustrated, you can throw a tire.
Yeah, you get to beat tires.
Or hit
And
one
Whereas you just have to
with
keep
a
smiling in
sledgehammer.
politics.
Exactly. I actually started doing boxing in 2008 because I think I needed something to help with my pent-up aggression.
After
from
dealing
doing
with John for
campaigns.
several months, she's like, I need to start hitting something.
Yeah, and that's
somehow.
very rewarding. And teaching females to box is really fun too, because they feel so good when they can
funny.
hit something.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
A lot of women don't feel like confident enough to change a tire.
No,
And that's
exactly.
the first time that they throw a tire, I guess they're going to be like,
Exactly.
"Actually, this isn't
God,
bad."
And the
I'm
name
not
kind
gonna
of
get that
scares
out of my
them,
head.
but then they see there's pink and they see it's like largely females, and then I'm female, so then they kind of build up that confidence. And it's a closed gym, meaning like we only do boot camps and one-on-ones, so it's not like dudes are just staring at them on the like why they lift weights. So it's like a safe place for them to kind of really build up. So
And for you, you're getting more, having to deal with less political
crap.
yeah, because
Yes.
you're getting respected as a trainer. Even if I was a man, there's
Yeah.
no question. You don't have to bring your husband when you're doing a one-on-one
exactly.
training, right?
Yep. And if those guys because we'll get like a lot of ex-meatheads, you just make them puke once and then you have their respect. So I humble them.
I bet. It's just to plug one of our other shows, the one we did on Krav Maga, that's reminiscent of that. Because
Yeah.
she was really tough and earned the guys' respect really fast when she kicked their butts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's funny that way. Well, Tiffany, thank you so much for being here today. I mean,
Yes.
that stuff is so fascinating to me. I mean, I'm just amazed. And so, kind of I guess, I usually ask, do you have any takeaways here? And if I could offer a takeaway that I have from this is, when you see anything, I mean, there's always seems like a political event going on somewhere. And every couple of years we have elections that go on. Whenever you see anybody in either party attacking women because of their looks and some of these very petty things we're talking about that have nothing to do, stand up for them. Forget about the party that you belong to and stand up for that issue, because it impacts everybody. When we allow that kind of thing to slide, it doesn't matter if it's not your candidate. If you allow that kind of thing to slide, it'll happen to yours eventually. And that shouldn't be the thing that we're worried about. We should be, in my opinion, more worried about what's happening to our culture, allowing that to happen to women. So to me, that's a real takeaway. To always, you see people saying something on Facebook, Twitter, blogs anywhere, you see commentary, somebody at the office, whatever, say something and stand up to it.
Yeah, when I see it, to me, it just means that person's ignorant. I'm like, if you have something to say to, if you disagree with her politics, then talk about that. To just cut into somebody's, looks or whatever is just completely ignorant, asinine. I mean, it belittles the individual who's saying it. You know what I mean? That, in my mind, I think, oh, okay, so you're a third grader, and I absolutely shouldn't listen to anything that you have to say. Yeah. So.
Very good. Well, thank you again. And so, comments, please, on our YouTube channel underneath these videos, and we've got on lastcatherine.com. You can send in comments there. Let us know any other things that you'd like us to talk about, any other issues that we should guests we can have on. And if you're located in the Denver area, we'd love to have you come join us here. And if you have some interesting experiences and topics you'd like to go through, we'd love to talk to you. So anyway,
and follow us on Twitter at Last Catherine. I primarily run that one, and he's at Robert J. Hadfield at Robert J. Hadfield. Yeah. So tweet at us. Let us know what you think.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.